The FDA-approved indication for Axi-cel is in relapsed and refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, diffuse large B-cell lymphoma which arises out of follicular lymphoma, and also in primary mediastinal B-cell lymphoma. And this is after failure of 2 prior lines of therapy. The approval for CTL019 is in relapsed and refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma and also in transformed follicular lymphoma. This is also after failure of 2 prior lines of therapy. So relapsed and refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma or transformed from follicular lymphoma or primary mediastinal B-cell lymphoma tends to have very poor outcomes. There was a study called the SCHOLAR-1 study which was published a few years ago, which looked at this population of patients who had failed at least 2 prior therapies and found the outcomes to be very poor in this group of patients. The overall response rate was about 26%. The complete responses were very less, about 7% or so, and the median survival was only 6 months. So that tells us how poorly these patients can do, and this population of patients was then selected for testing this new therapy called CAR T therapy. The design of the trial testing liso-cel is called the TRANSCEND study from Juno Therapeutics. The population of patients who are being tested have relapsed refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma or transformed follicular lymphoma or high-grade B-cell lymphoma, which includes double-hit and triple-hit lymphoma after failure of at least 2 prior therapies, and this is in the core cohort of the study. In this study, once patient is deemed eligible, date is set up for apheresis, when the cell product is collected and then sent to Juno Therapeutics for generation of the CAR T cells, which also includes separation of these cells, of the T cells, into CD4 and CD8 groups, which are then separately expanded and have 2 separate products ready at the end, which are then given to the patient. While the patient is waiting, bridging therapy is allowed. So based on the clinical need and investigator discretion, bridging treatment can be given to these patients. If bridging treatment is given, a repeat scan is performed prior to lymphodepleting chemotherapy to make sure that we get accurate assessment prior to starting lymphodepletion. Lymphodepleting therapy is given with fludarabine and Cytoxan for 3 days, and after that the CAR T cell product can be given between 2 and 7 days after completion of lymphodepletion. So both the CD8 positive CAR T cells and the CD4 positive CAR T cells are given in 1-to-1 composition to the patient, and then the patient is observed for toxicity and management post completion of this infusion. We know that relapsed refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma is an area of clinical unmet need. Knowing that the CAR T therapies have been now approved and clinical trials are available for CAR T therapies, we have seen a tremendous demand for these therapies at our center. We see a lot of patients who are referred from referring providers, and there are many patients who are directly calling to be able to see if they're eligible for CAR T therapies or not. So yes, there's been a tremendous patient demand in this region.